Just wanted to give a quick announcement that I do have a second channel now where I will be posting all of the short form content videos too on the gaming industry or video games in general or whatever else I really feel like making. So I encourage you to go check that out if that is something you're interested in. That one is now Pixel Breakdown, and this one is Pixel Breakdown Pod. Hi, this is Emily with Pixel Breakdown, and today I have Nick here. You want to give an introduction on yourself and a quick pitch about your game?
Yeah, sure. My name's Nick McKay. I'm a Chicago indie dev, and I am the director and lead designer for a game called Elemera. So Elemera, it's a monster tamer game. Think Pokemon, recently Pal World, Shin Megami Tensei, that kind of thing. It's an open world game. And the biggest thing that sets us apart from other games in the genre, two things. First, we have a persistent ecosystem. So the entire world is being simulated somewhat in real time. So if you say, I'm going to use Pokemon verbiage because it's easier to understand. Say you encounter a level 50 Charizard at the beginning of the game, beats you up, total jerk. You leave, you come back 5 hours later, maybe it's a level 53 Charizard, but now you're level 60 and you can kick their butt, but it's still the same Charizard. They've been living their life. They've been bullying plenty of other people. They've got buddies. Exactly. And not everyone's a bully. You might meet a little Squirtle out there, and then you come back later and he's evolved into a war turtle. He's been living his life. He decided he wants to be a ranger out there saving other elemental creatures. There's a whole ecosystem. There are predators, there's prey, there's flora, there's fauna for all these unique biomes. Additionally, the game's not about collecting. A lot of Monster Tamer games are gotta fill out that dex, gotta fill out that compendium, what have you. This game is a lot more about the adventure. You're in a mysterious, dangerous world. You're making buddies. You're going on crazy, dangerous, and exciting adventures with them. Somewhat analogous to the early anime of Pokemon. I look at a lot of Monster Tamer games. They're very urban. They're very people-focused. And I don't feel like that's why a lot of people are attracted to the genre. It's the creatures, it's the stories that you tell with them. For that reason, there's no people. They all died. They all did bad things. This is all far in the future. You're playing just another elemental creature.
So the player plays as another elemental creature.
Yeah. So your creature species, they're kind of the overseers of the planet. They have no combat abilities. They're literally incapable of fighting on their own behalf. But there's an inherent trust that everyone else has towards them. They know that they have an obligation to take care of the environment, the planet, the ecosystem.
So there's like a hierarchy where it's like you're not a person, but you're still kind of expected to have a different grasp of what the world needs or that sort of thing. But you're still just a creature, technically.
Yeah. Basically, your species is supposed to take the role humanity was supposed to take on this planet before they screwed it all up. So the game's got some interwoven environmental messaging into it. You have two obligations. You have to discover all there is to learn about the world, the creatures, the ecosystem, the mysteries, the history, whatever. And then also to do your best to take care of the world as it exists. And it's a pretty open-ended game. We kind of leave the player to go about that however they want. You don't have to engage in combat. You don't have to engage in any social structures that you don't want to. There's a lot of ways for players to get experience, to gain affinity with other creatures. We really want to encourage players to tell their own stories the way that they want. So we put a lot of effort into identifying different types of players and making sure that they're well served by the game.
Yeah, so it sounds like the player, it's one of the open world sort of things where the player can define what their gameplay is.
Exactly.
Right? That was going to be one of my questions, was like what the difference is between Elemera and like traditional Monster Tamer games. I know we discussed before when y'all were thinking of a name, you know, you decided to axe the Mon at the end. Which
Yeah.
I think is good because the Mon at the end, people come in with expectations, whether good or bad, right? That it's going to be a lot like Pokemon.
Right.
But yeah, it sounds like you really are creating your own genre,
Mhm.
and axing them on, I think, was a good choice. I do want to ask before we go deep into the game, like what's the origin story for your studio? How did y'all come to be?
Yeah. I'm not sure how common this is in the industry. I work a day job that's very much people came together, put their studio together, work on the same kind of games. That's not how this studio came together. Basically, there was a fan project called PokeWilds, which was also an open world monster tamer game, except that one was 2D top down in the old Game Boy aesthetic, very sprite based. And a lot of this team came together. The Discord was adding 500, 1,000 members a day. We were spending hours just going through applications to join the team. And we amalgamated a very strong, capable team of artists, composers, designers, programmers. And when the game got too big and too popular, this is a fan game, we knew we were going to get shut down. We put the game on hiatus. We kind of backed away from it because, again, we didn't want to get in trouble.
Right.
And we thought, we're getting a lot of feedback from these people. They really like what we're doing here, not just because it's Pokemon, but we're getting feedback from players that they like the way that we design a world, design game mechanics, design social interactions between players and with players and the environment. So we thought, you know what? Why don't we just make our own IP? Why don't we make our own company? So a large portion of the team split off. We looked into the logistics of making our own company. We stepped back. We thought, okay, well, everybody here likes Pokemon. Everybody here likes Monster Tamer games. Everybody here likes this kind of game. But what assumptions made in Pokemon or made in the genre itself are really good design choices, and what are just arbitrary decisions somebody made in 1996 that they're stuck with for 20, 30 years now.
Right.
And we spent a couple months doing that. When we were really confident in the direction we wanted to go with the game, we started expanding out. We started bringing in people that we knew that were interested in the pitch. We brought in some people that we saw online because there were certain technical requirements we wanted to do with this game that we needed some expertise in. And the studio's kind of grown organically to 26 members now, which as a secondary job is a lot to manage, but it's so much fun. I'm so glad that everybody's been as excited about the vision for the game as I have been. So it really makes me happy.
I love the idea of you going from making a fan game where you're stuck within the constraints of Pokemon and the Pokemon world as it's defined to, making your own vision come to light. And it's really exciting. Like, I can't wait to see what you guys end up making. I think it's also a good sign that y'all were able to work so well together before it was a company.
Yeah.
So I expect to see like really good progress made on this game. What sort of visual style are you going for the game?
So as I mentioned, when we did PokeWilds, it was a top-down 2D infinite open world game. We have a lot of very talented sprite artists, so we knew we wanted to use sprites in some capacity. We started doing another game in top-down 2D, but we ran into issues with exploration. If you have a 2D sprite or like composite of sprites for a mountain, you just cannot go behind that mountain. And you'll notice if you ever play a Game Boy game, if there's a house there, you cannot go behind the house because the sprite itself is the collision box. And that makes exploration tedious and it limits it. You now can do less exploration per area of the world. So we thought, okay, what else are people doing in this aesthetic? And we looked at what Square Enix has been doing with their 2.5D trademark that we can't use. With Octopath Traveler.
So the 2.5D, they have it trademarked?
They have a trademark. Yeah, you cannot use that in marketing. You can't use that in any official material.
Imagine somebody trademarking 3D
or Metroidvania or like action platformer. Yeah. It's insane. Or like, so the other thing that we use is, so we started doing that. We had some fun experimenting there. But we were still running into issues where, okay, well, if we have the sprites facing the camera and we're still doing meshed 3D models, the aesthetic kind of clashes when you're stretching a sprite-based texture over a relatively smooth or high poly mesh. You get a bunch of weird triangles, the pixels get broken up. So we pivoted to doing a mix of sprite art and voxel art with the same pixel voxel density, which is an aesthetic that looks really cool. I really want to share that as we go forward. I'm really excited about it. It's something I haven't really seen anyone do, because usually when people do voxel art, they just commit to voxel art. The other interesting thing we do a lot, when people think voxel games, they think Minecraft, they think Cube World, Teardown. We're trying to do something slightly different. A lot of voxel games, they basically just make a model and then they rotate it arbitrarily. You actually sometimes see this in 2D too, where they make a sprite and then they just like rotate it. We don't like the aesthetic of non-grid aligned voxels or pixels. So what we do instead is all the voxel art, all the pixel art is grid aligned in the same grid. So if I have an animating tree, the leaves will like jump from one voxel to the other instead of just like smoothly waving between. This is very hard to describe just orally, but if you look up the work of John Lynn, he was a pretty interesting voxel artist before he got hired into a studio where he can't share his art anymore. But it's a very fun toy box to work inside of.
I'll find references of it that I can overlay.
I can send you a good example too, if you'd like. But yeah, no, we're trying to do a very unique aesthetic. We're doing some interesting stuff with 3D materials. So basically, you think of a 2D texture as just like a 2D grid of pixels. It's the same thing for a 3D texture, except you also have depth. So think of just extrapolating that over voxels. So now instead of 2D and like depthless pixels, they're now voxels. And the cool thing you can do with 3D textures is because they take up a volume, you can just apply them to any shape. If I make a 3D texture of wood, I can just sample that wherever in there. In the same way that you can do random sampling for textures, it looks even better with 3D materials because I can just like arbitrarily reorient, so like rotate the 3D texture, loop it through itself. That's a hard thing to think of in your brain, but the end result is every rock is going to be slightly different. Every tree is going to be slightly different. They're not just like copy paste the same model and texture everywhere. You don't have the issues you run into with a lot of large, say open world games where if you zoom out, suddenly you see the texture repeating everywhere.
Right.
We won't have that issue both on like a plane or a 3D model, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, I love when there's little hacks that make development easier, but also the result of that hack is like more varied, or it gives the player just a different experience, which is nice because you can be sucked out of the world that you're in when you start to notice like, yeah, every rock has the same pattern or every, so yeah, I think that that's great. And you're doing the, not 2.5D, but technically 2.5D.
Yeah.
I love that too, because I think like I really like 2D art, but you're right, like it is very limiting when it is just a 2D game. There's so much on the different planes that you could explore and add like more depth to the game that just a 2D game is very limited. So yeah, I think that that's great. And I guess the artists were comfortable coming from the past pixel game over to this.
Yeah, so that was the biggest thing. We have great sprite artists. All of the creatures are still 2D sprites. we're still deciding if we want to keep them truly 2D a la Paper Mario or just make them like 1 voxel thick for consistency's sake. But yeah, we wanted to make the transition as easy as possible for our artists in a style that they're comfortable with, because we like their style. We want to be able to elevate and promote that as much as we can. And honestly, from what we've done so far with the voxel art, it does not seem to have been a ridiculous transition. Getting used to the tools obviously takes time, but insofar as like their mind's eye, how they think of designing a asset, that hasn't changed dramatically like it would if we were doing traditional 3D modeling and and mapping, UV mapping, textures, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the skill translates over. So I am curious, like how do you handle actually designing the different Elemera and in a way that sort of ensures that they're all unique, right?
So it's really fun. I will say the process is so much fun on the design side and on the art side. Basically, in a lot of games, they will start with an idea for an area, and they will design, okay, we've got this little doodad that's doing this thing and it fits the aesthetic, or it has this certain function to a level. Think of like a Mario platformer. This has a mechanical reason that it's here, and we design around that. Because we have such a focus on making the world, little side note, the original working title for this was Project Living World, and that's like the first thing that's on our minds whenever we're designing anything. Because the main conceit for this was to make a believable, living, dynamic world, we start with a rough idea for, okay, we have this biome, we have these elements that are active here. All of our biomes are just as dynamic and exciting as the creatures themselves. That was another decision that we made. This isn't Earth, this is cooler Earth. So first we design what the biome starting phase is. And then we're like, okay, we have these materials, we have these elements, what would live here? And if this thing lives here, how does the material it processes get used by other ones? We build not quite a food web, because nothing actually eats each other, but they do predate on each other. So if something produces a lot of like gems, something will predate and like take their gems from them. So yeah, we design an ecosystem that should be self-sufficient with a little bit of surplus, because the player is going to want to use some of it. Right. It'd be really annoying if you're just sitting there watching. Yeah. There is some excess, but there's like a limit to that buffer. So we design the ecosystem itself. We think of, okay, what are some niches here that could be filled by different Elemera? Or, okay, we've addressed that. We need some variance in scale. We need some variance in interactions that the player's going to have. We're going to have something scary, something cute. We try to have a good balance of, we have like 3 points to our triangle of design. There's cool, cute, and weird. Some things bridge 2 or 3 of those categories. And in order to like appeal to different players with different sensibilities, again, we try to balance those out too. And there is one specific type of Elemera that we design independent of that. It's not uncommon that when we're designing the world mechanically, we'll come across something where, if we make the world incredibly open, we leave the opportunity for a player to really screw themselves or other players over through their own decisions. One such example, when we have a water biome, think the ocean or a lake or a river, there is in some effect an infinite water source. We also have subterranean biomes. If some malicious or unknowing player or griefer more than likely thinks, I could flood the entire underground by just like piercing the bedrock below the ocean. If they decide to do that, first, there are some visual cues that tell them that they shouldn't be doing that. Some like runes show up and like they're very hard to break. But if they do break it, a big burly divine Elemera shows up and beats them up and tells them not to do that anymore. And everybody hates them. All the Elemera have some awareness of players' actions and keep that in mind, even if they don't directly see it. If they do directly see it, they'll really not like you, or really like you if you do positive things. And yeah, for that reason, we've designed some mechanically significant Elemera that serve to like reinforce good behavior and punish bad behavior.
I love that. I think that's such a cool way to, again, not take the player out of the world, but tell them to stop doing something, basically. So are there any other Elemera that are like that are like specifically when there's like glitches or bugs that happen?
Yes. So there is one specific Elemera I'm really proud of. A lot of people on the team, we're old, okay? We're in our late 20s, early 30s, and we remember playing Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, and coming across Missing Node, this really glitched out. It's not an intended thing. It's just a weird quirk of there being spawn conditions and arbitrary data, and the game was held together by duct tape. And we like the idea of a glitch creature. And we also like the idea of these mechanically significant Elemera. So we thought, it'd be really cool. What if we make a creature that every time one of the asserts in our code that doesn't just crash the game, like an assumption the code, some bug that we're looking for triggers, it spawns one of these creatures. And the benefit of its spawning is, well, first of all, it shows up. Players are like, whoa, this is crazy. And it does give them a prompt to fill out a bug report. But regardless if they fill out the bug report, if they tell their buddies, hey, I was at this place doing this thing and this rare creature showed up, that's the same thing as filling out a bug report. They're just not aware that they're doing so. And it's a lot more appealing to the player. So if we just look through forums or posts online for people reporting the appearance of this creature that they can only find through these bugs, at least at release, it helps us to track down and fix issues with our code.
Brilliant.
I think that's neat.
Yeah, it is. I could see people intentionally going out to try and find bugs now.
Exactly.
So you technically have a whole other like army of QA players, probably. So can you go a little further? I know that there's supposedly a rapport system, right?
Yes.
I know Elemera don't follow like the traditional recruitment systems. Can you also explain like the different ways players form bonds and interact with them? And if the rapport system ties into that at all?
Sure. So as I alluded to earlier, there is a sense of like awareness that the creatures in the world have of the player. As the player goes about their day, I already said they have like a duty to look after the ecosystem. So if you're going out there and you're just strip mining a forest, people might not like that. The ecosystem itself is a character. It has agency. It's aware of what you're doing there. The judgment, there is a global judgment, but there more importantly is a biome-specific rapport value that keeps track of like, okay, this person, they're out here, they're helping heal the sick, they're helping remove invasive species or reintroducing something that's lacking here. They're playing with the Elemera, they're doing whatever, good stuff. They could also be burning all the trees down. Right. As I said, they could be strip mining here. They could just be beating up babies for absolutely no reason. And
you always got to have reason for beating up the babies.
Exactly. Look, some of them probably deserve it, but not all of them. And while the Elemera themselves have an individual rapport with you, like, I don't know, you slip them like some free wood that they need for their structure that they're building. They probably like that. Or again, you're playing tag or hide and seek with them. They love that. Or you help their buddy, and then their buddy tells them about that. And they're like, oh, well, this is probably a pretty chill dude. That leads to larger impacts. So as I said, the ecosystem, its own character. If you start doing really bad stuff, first of all, we have a very like low threshold. If you jump into a server and then immediately start griefing, the server can just set on a setting to like instantly kick those people. But assuming you're on a server that's okay with it, or you're playing single player, the biome will go into a negative rapport, and then they might start messing with you. You might start getting hit with more bad weather. or natural disasters. You specifically.
I love that.
The creatures just inherently don't trust you. You also don't have the capacity to reserve land for yourself. So you're just kind of like at the whims of everyone else. You build a house, they're at free range to just disassemble it if you're not on good terms and haven't like reserved a spot for yourself.
I love that.
Yeah. Similarly, like, yeah, Elemera, like or don't like you, you're going to be way more likely to recruit them to join you on your journey if you're chill and like they know that you're a good person.
Which is more realistic. Because
Right.
I think it's funny when games, it's like I can go and like steal, like rob a farmer blind, and then I go into his home and he's like, here, let me make you dinner. And it's like, no, that wouldn't happen. Like they would hate me.
No, for sure. And we want them to hate you. That's very important.
Yeah.
Or like you too. That's cool. But like, yeah. And we feel that like a lot of players, like you're saying, want creatures to have memory. We might not be able to like cement every individual thing to memory, but keeping at least this like net value and a couple little significant memories, I feel like adds a lot. It's not full Dwarf Fortress where they write down their entire life story. Right. We can't do that with an entire simulated world, but we're trying our best to make the bonds or whatever the opposite of bonds between you and these creatures feel as well fleshed out as possible. As I said earlier, the game's not about collecting anything. You have like something analogous to a Pokedex. You have a journal. Instead of just writing down everything there ever was to know about Pikachu as soon as you just see one in the woods, it writes down the things that you directly observed. If you see that the Pikachu like jumping between trees, you will log that specifically. If you see that they like making nests out of twigs, you'll write down that specifically. And like as you observe more and more stuff, you fill out your journal, you get experience for this, your character levels up, they're doing their job.
Can you end up seeing like an anomaly of the species? So it's like if you see like you were saying, a Pikachu jumping from tree to tree, is there a high chance that maybe it's just that Pikachu that likes doing that? Or is it like a mix of, no, they all kind of have like this base sort of thing, but then they can grow past that?
Yeah, so there is, that's a good point. If I might actually, it's a good idea. I might do it because it won't go on the journal because like it's a very unique thing to them, but it might like put out an exclamation point that like, that's not normal. This is not a thing that they normally do. Or like put a question mark by the entry.
Yeah, because I could see you using then that data to then be like, okay, let me hash through this and see what the like read on this like server define them in some way, because you can find those like, okay, these are similarities that they're all doing, but these are ones that are not. So that's kind of like anomalous. I don't even know if that's a word, anomalous, but
no, you're right.
Okay.
That is an important thing we want to. So like every species has like a default like offset, like they tend to be more social, or they tend to be more skittish, or they tend to be more aggressive. But on top of that, every individual Elemera that spawns has its own personality, its own preferences, its own.
And those get shaped by the interaction with the players, or
so some of it is innate. Like there is a mix of nurture and nature. So like you might have the one-off shark that just loves people and loves going up to people and like snuggling or whatever. But some of it is also impacted by the relationships they have with other Elemera and more importantly with the player. So if they're very standoffish, but like you go and like show that you can be trusted or whatever, they might become closer, even in a limited capacity. These values can shift. It's just harder. Just like a real person.
Right.
You don't immediately start hanging out with someone and then they completely change their personality. It takes time for people to change. And again, we want the game to feel fulfilling for the time that you put into it. We want these connections to feel worthwhile. You don't need to have 1 million different Elemera recruited to feel satisfied with your journey. We feel like less is more in this case. Having a couple of really strong bonds where you've gone on this adventure with them, you remember doing this specific thing with this guy, or you recruited this one that was trapped in the middle of a lava pool. I don't know how it got there, but it was, and you had to go and rescue it. I feel like that means a lot more to the player, especially because these aren't scripted. None of these are scripted. Things just do their own stuff. They end up in their own peril. They end up in these weird situations, and then it's up to the player to decide to engage. And
so
I
it's
feel
like you
that
might have to save one from the lava, but another player on a different server might not even encounter one of those.
Yeah, or they just say, they're on their own. I don't feel like it. I got something better to do. And like that choice makes the encounter more meaningful to the players who do choose to engage. And again, because it's not scripted, it doesn't feel arbitrary. There is some level of like immediacy, like this happens right now, and it's up to me how I choose to engage. And then it feels realistic that they would have this rapport bonus for you engaging with them. It's not the like NPC that every day decides, oh no, there's a rat infestation, and never like closes up their cellar. Maybe it only happened once, and you just happened to have been there.
Each experience is special. Yeah, it is very neat. I know that there's factions in the game, right? So how all does that tie in?
So that's also kind of tied into the rapport system. So the game is multiplayer. And I keep saying servers. It's more or less the Minecraft model where someone or some service will be hosting a server and everyone else connects to it. And within a world, you'll see colonies of species. Sometimes they adopt, sometimes there's a mutual relationship where you'll have one or two species, or they'll adopt an orphan from another species. But generally, you'll see these colonies throughout the world. Like you, they can claim territory. They build up their colonies using resources just like you. It's not pre-generated that they have everything they need. Again, they live their own lives. But the player also has the opportunity to build their own colonies. We call them factions because to differentiate that the player's doing it. And when a faction is formed, we kind of group all the rapport together within that biome. So you and your buddy, you're out taking care of like the flora out there. The other buddies out there playing park ranger, whatever. All of it is contributing still to the whole. As your rapport goes up, you can claim more territory up to a limit. We're not making a like late stage capitalism turn the whole woods into a timber yard kind of thing. But you can expand your territory. You can do certain quirks within the territory you've had. Like if you accumulate enough rapport, maybe they trust you to adjust the sub-biome parameters a little bit, make it a little bit more humid, or adjust the weather patterns a little. But you have to earn that trust. And as your faction grows and get this better relationship, eventually you're given the opportunity as the faction to like take responsibility for this biome. I believe we're only allowing 2 factions per biome. But basically, like if you take domain, there is this normally this big divine Elemera that's like in charge of looking after the desert or the forest or the ocean or whatever. And you take the responsibility. You prove will probably be a battle, probably something exciting or a challenge or whatever. And then you're now in charge of that biome. And now if anything goes wrong, it's on you to address it, or you lose that right. Factions also like give you the opportunity for like stuff between players. You can build your own gyms or structures, or like somehow like mini game interactions between other players. Those are constrained to the factions. You can build teleport waypoints. So there's like an incentive for some players to be scouts looking out into new areas, settling them so that other players can explore easier. We want fast travel to be a little difficult because a lot of open world games make fast travel super easy, and then nobody ever goes in the points between them. We want this to feel like adventurous and like you're in the wilderness. So anything we can do to like make urbanization hard is a goal that we're trying to strive for.
I feel like exploration is kind of inherently important to the player in this game because you have the chance to encounter something random. But I see where you're saying like you don't want people just like jumping from space to space.
Right, because all the cool stuff is in between.
Right. Well, you mentioned battling. So how is battling sort of planned out for this?
Okay. So battling, as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to actively engage in this if you don't want to. In fact, the player doesn't get experience from battling at all. Your Elemera might, and they might love battling. Again, everyone's got different personalities. You might have a guy or a girl that's like super excited to take a battle or challenge at any given point.
Are you able to hear the people outside?
Just a little
bit, but
it's okay. You're good. For the players who do like battling, we do have a fairly well explored battle system. It's 2v2, and it's a mix of turn-based strategy and tactical strategy. It's 2v2, but then there's all the spaces in between those Elemera slots. So you can place obstacles in the middle.
Cool.
You can modify the terrain. All the battles take place in the environment. So if you shoot off a fire blast and light the tree on fire that's behind your target, that tree's on fire.
In the world.
With or without the battle. Yeah, it's just on fire. You can also use all the attacks from the battles outside of battle and do whatever they would be doing. So if you want to put out that tree, use a water attack or a earth attack or something. Part of the conceit and part of the reason that this game's taken so much effort is we want I believe the term Nintendo used for Breath of the Wild is a chemical system. We want all the interactions to be intuitive and to encourage creativity and like experimentation, just like any other aspect of the game. And there's like, again, a lot of quirks. Like I said earlier, we looked at Pokemon. We thought, Pokemon has this thing where they really, really, really want you to like nail the type chart and like only use super effective attacks. And that's cool, but it really just turns the game into, I believe the term is rocket tag, where if you're ever playing single player through Pokemon, you just spam strongest move. If it's super effective, one shot. It's not very exciting. We lowered the effectiveness of super effectiveness. We also added little quirks for having, so Pokemon and a lot of these Monster Tamer games, the skill they want you to develop is having a well-balanced team. And that is cool. And the system inherently does encourage that. But some people also just like one type of thing. They like all little spooky guys or little electric jerks. So we also have a quirk where if two Elemera use an attack of the same type in one turn, it enhances both of their moves. So there's some benefit to having a more monotonous team. So again, we're trying to appeal to people with different preferences as much as we can while still keeping things balanced.
It sounds like you're catering, to different play styles and really pushing the player towards exploration, even in like the battling system. Like there's benefits to trying out these different things, which it's great.
Well, the other thing with the battle system that's really important is we already mentioned they have different. All Elemera individuals have different personalities. That also applies to the ones that are on your team or the enemies. You might just have a guy that loves big flashy attacks, or you might want have one that just like loves little technical quirky things, and they are happier when they're able to do the stuff that they like. You also have the option to just like not tell them specifically what to do, but say like, you choose, you pick. And then they will like think in their brain, they're like, okay, well, this would be a stupid move, but of the ones that won't immediately lead me to like failure, I'm going to do the one that I like. The enemies do the same thing. If they are a species or an individual that's very social, they might coordinate their attacks with their ally. Otherwise, they might just like completely ignore their ally and do whatever.
If there's one that likes peace, will it? If you're like, do what you want to do,
will passive healing moves?
Yeah. Will it? Try and like, I guess, what is it? Find a peaceful resolution to the battle.
Right. Or they might like refuse or like try fleeing immediately. Again, depending on how severe their pacifism is. And as I mentioned before, you don't have to battle. You can recruit some Elemera, but just like walking up to them and saying, hey, you want to join? And they're like, oh, that sounds awesome. I've been bored out of my mind. Yeah, I'll go on an adventure with you. Or other ones, like, they might be food motivated, like people. Or again, you cure their friend of an illness. Or again, you save that guy in the lava, and that might motivate them to like help you do that for others.
Real benefits to interacting with the world.
Yeah. It's not just that some do like battle. Some might be like, I'll join you, but I need somebody strong who like I can know that's going to like have my back, and they might want to have a battle. But you can't force your way to recruit anyone in any given way. They still have a choice. And also, even after you've recruited them, if you're a jerk to them, they can just leave. Like if you just bring them on and then you completely like face heel turn and like turn out to be a jerk, their rapport is going to drop into the negatives, and they'll be like, peace, I'm not dealing with this crap anymore. I'm out.
I love consequences.
Which is another incentive also to just like not recruit a bajillion guys, just the ones that you're actually comfortable with and like chill with.
So the goal isn't to catch them all. It
is not. No, it's like I don't have like a 3 word verb focused thing. Maybe we'll work on a slogan. Maybe that'll be our next thing on the task board. But no, it's more about building connections with the creatures and the world. A lot of our inspiration comes not just from Pokemon, but also like The Sims, Animal Crossing, games that you wouldn't necessarily associate with like an action heavy game like this, but where people can invest dozens of hours because of the worlds that they create somewhat in their own heads, just like as they're making explaining the fantasy to themselves. We want to make that real as much as possible. I love how much the jerks in the original Animal Crossing were on the GameCube. And it'd be really cool if instead of just having dialogue, they actually can act upon that.
Right. Like they actually have feelings.
Yeah.
And slap you around a little if you're acting nonsensical.
Yeah. And if you keep giving them trash as a present, they just don't like you.
Yes. Agreed. I love that. So I saw there was 5 main design goals that were outlined. Immersion, connection, inspiration, interaction, and attention. Which of those has been like the hardest to design for?
Okay, so on a technical level, immersion is the hardest because there are so many systems involved. We have the actual generation of the world. We need to guarantee that it's cool and dynamic and everybody's world's different, but that it also guarantees that they won't miss out on a biome or like a spawn or whatever. We want the worlds to feel cool and interesting. So we're trying to push the boundaries for procedural generation. This is a weird quirk not everybody notices. In Minecraft, all the rivers are flat and they don't flow. And the reason for that is the way that a lot of the infinite worlds generate. The chunks themselves have no idea what's around them. They use the same like functions. So they'll like have the slopes line up or whatever, but they have no idea where that river is going to connect to the next one. So they have to use just like one function that always just makes these kind of wavy patterns. We want the rivers to start at a high place, flow down, carve out, whatever. And we figured it out. It's just like, it takes time and making it feel like takes effort. Similarly, figuring out how weather systems work, figuring out just how to put all the data that we want in this world into a package that can be sent over the internet.
Right.
I know, again, and this is also like a big emphasis because I'm also the technical director. So I think about this all the time because I just want to make the world as cool as I can within the constraints of reality. So a large part of the pre-production was actually just me sitting down doing math, thinking of like, okay, I only have this much RAM, I only have this much VRAM, I only have this much bandwidth that I can do per tick per second. How can I squeeze as much as I possibly can out of that just in the design space? And then we scope the world accordingly so that we know even as this game develops and gets more interesting, we'll still be able to deliver a game that runs on a reasonable PC. The design space, though, interaction is definitely the hardest. Again, designing these full ecosystems is a chore because we have to think, okay, well, we want to have enough stuff that it looks visually interesting, it's fun to explore, whatever. We want to have this ecosystem, but it can't be so fragile that like one guy deciding he doesn't want to collect wood anymore completely collapses the ecosystem. But it also can't be so generous that the player has no reason to like care. So finding that balance takes a lot of time and effort, but it is very fulfilling. We usually find cool solutions that are even better than what we had before. So I like the whole process. I like all 5. They're very fun challenges.
They sound interesting. It sounds like interesting problems to have. And the game itself sounds very ambitious. And it is good to hear that you are still thinking about ways to provide this game and not destroy a computer in the process or take up all the space that a player has. So yeah. And then I wonder like, just designing as far as like the interaction goes, it sounds like eventually you might get to a point where you can lay it out almost mathematically to where it designs itself almost.
And this is true of a lot of simulation-heavy games. Building the systems takes time, but once the systems are in there, with the exception of a couple of like unique mechanics, it's a lot faster to iterate. Okay, we have a physics system, we have a gravity system. Adding a landslide versus an avalanche is not a big difference. Once we have waves working, doing that with air currents is not that dissimilar. So it takes a lot of lead up, but once they're there, it's a lot easier for me to just sit a designer down and they say, I'd like to do this. And then I can say, okay, we can do that. It's already integrated. It's not that hard. Or, okay, if we adjust it a little bit so that it's like this, we can totally do that. It might take like a week to implement. And that's fun. Yeah. It's really nice being able to say yes to people on the team because it can get really hard when you're saying no all the time. This is something that I've learned both in my job and on Elemera. The perception that programmers have of what's easy and hard on the art side and the perception that artists have on what's easy and hard on the programming side are usually not in sync. Right. And being able to like allow people to have the confidence to like suggest something is something that I haven't really thought about until I was in the like captain's chair and I have to make that happen. But every time I can tell someone yes, and it's like not that hard and we're like already working on it, is really fun for everyone involved. And it really helps keep everyone motivated.
Yeah. As a programmer, there were times where design would bring stuff up and I'm like, well, you already were having us go in this direction and now you're wanting it this way, which is totally doable, but it does take time. And I think we got to a point eventually where it was like, there was a lot more planning that went into making these decisions. So we actually like would sit down and like really think through like, if we do it this way, what is that going to impact potentially for the future? Things like that. So it is, it takes time, but eventually you learn how people communicate and work through those things. Okay. You started in Godot, right?
Yeah. So originally, like a lot of people, Godot was like the hot new engine. And again, because we're starting from a 2D background, we're like, okay, Godot works in 2D. Let's try working here. It's lightweight. It's easy to prototype. We'll see what we can do. Unfortunately, this was like 3 years ago. Godot, I recommend it to so many devs doing their first projects or that just want to do a 2D game. I highly recommend it over Unity for most projects in that specific paradigm. However, at the time, we were trying to do one or two things that Godot didn't just have a like templated, easy drop-in solution for. And for that reason, we were spending so much time going through the source code because there was no documentation to answer our questions. We would go on their Discord forum. Nobody would have answers. And we were just like hitting walls constantly. And it was just really slowing development to a halt. I've heard it's better now. In retrospect, we probably couldn't have done what we want to do now in Godot because it's so performance intensive. But at that point, we decided, okay, we're going to go fully the other direction to a solution that I know takes care of everything, and we're going to do Unreal. This was also around the time that we decided, okay, we tried doing a prototype in Godot and we ran into these issues when everything's 2D. Again, the mountain obstructs everything, the building obstructs everything. That's in conflict with exploration and adventure. So we pivoted to Unreal. We want to do the voxel-based thing. We get a bunch of prototypes done. We have some cool stuff with how like sprites are always facing the camera and like change their state as the camera goes around them. Looked really cool. Great for visual prototyping. As soon as we started adding the voxel logic, even on our really nice workstation, performance was absolute crap because voxels are very expensive and an engine that's not designed around them. Right. And unfortunately, that's true of like all engines that people use. There are a couple of voxel specific engines, but just like any engine, they're tailored to a very specific game. So we were really racking our heads for a while trying to think of what we can do. Because again, we liked Unreal. A lot of the team's familiar in C++. We didn't have a good solution. So we started going to a lot of these voxel game dev Discords and forums and asking people around. We actually recruited a couple of people who've already designed their own engines. Nice. And one of them recommended we pick this very, very, very lightweight. It's more of a library than an engine. It is an engine technically, but the way that we use it is more or less like a rendering pipeline with benefits. Again, this is a very technical thing, but basically we took their rendering engine, gutted everything from it, and basically just use it for some of the things that it does do, where it like gives cross support for Vulkan, OpenCL, Mac Metal, all these different platform or device specific rendering things that we don't want to deal with. It does that for us, which is great, but otherwise we're writing all the code ourselves. This is like 99% our own engine. Even in Unreal, it was like 90%. Now it's like almost entirely custom.
What's the like library engine that you've been using? It's
called Tellusim, Tellusim. It's really cool. We know the dev who's in charge of it. He's awesome. He's very responsive. We're very lucky to be in this situation. But outside of that as the rendering thing, everything we're doing is just like built on top of very basic C++ libraries and our own custom compression and like formatting and everything, which takes a lot of work. Like I've never spent more time just staring at ones and zeros, writing the format and like transformations for the binary data. Do not recommend to anyone. But it does mean that our game will be very performant for specifically what we've designed it to do. Which when you have an ambitious project, it's a lot easier to do that from the ground up than to go back and to completely redesign it. So it's made development, especially where we are right now in production, a lot faster. The switch was totally worth it in retrospect.
There are times where companies in the past have chosen to do like their own engine and then they end up not releasing the game because they're spending so much time working on the engine. Have you gotten past that hurdle sort of, or?
Yeah, the nice thing is that, again, some of these libraries are pretty good at solving every problem they could possibly have. Our networking, we're using a library that originally Minecraft used for their networking, but then got deprecated and then taken over by another company who then they themselves got deprecated. But the final release is stable. We're not touching it, but it solves everything. It does all of the like, somebody drops a packet, resend the information over. It solves issues with like obfuscating IPs for clients so that we don't have to send that directly. It solves a lot of problems so that we don't have to do it ourselves. And that saves us months of time. It's very heavyweight, but once we have it integrated, we have it integrated. So we're not doing everything completely from scratch. Our ECS we're not writing that by hand. We're using it's called Mustache. Already exists, just do it how they do it. The systems themselves we write, but that would be true in any game. So it's not like we're doing everything whole cloth. But the hard stuff, luckily we have devs who've already written their own voxel engines. They know how to deal with those problems. They can even borrow code from their existing code bases. So we haven't really run into too many walls after we got past the point where we wrote all of our custom formatting and everything.
Are you ever planning on releasing this like medley of an engine that you're putting together?
There's a lot of tools that we've made that I'll definitely be releasing because there's no reason that other people couldn't use it, especially because we would like to have the game is being designed with a modding API in mind. So any of the tools that we use for asset creation or testing, there's no reason we shouldn't also release that to the community so that they can use it and more efficiently do the stuff that they want to do with the game.
Nice.
Some of the stuff we can't because it like opens up vulnerabilities to people exploiting or like accessing other people's data that they shouldn't be. So some of the stuff we do have to keep constrained, the way that we anonymize data, for instance, that has to be kept on our end. But anything that has to do with like assets or the way that the game generates or like processes data, we can probably open up to the community. With a couple caveats, we don't want to do it until it's finalized because just like anything, as soon as you put it out into the world, people get attached to it. And it's dangerous for like people to get really integrated into like one way of developing, say, mods or like content for the game. And then suddenly it shifts and all their stuff doesn't work anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Like foresight.
Yeah.
Any advice that you would give to aspiring devs who want to make a big game like this?
Yeah, two things. One, you have to be I would definitely recommend getting experience in smaller things first. It is very overwhelming to jump into a project of this scale, especially if I was doing this by myself, it would never happen, or at least it'd take me 20 years. I've already had to learn so many different skills along the process here, which is cool. I mean, if you're in game dev and you don't like learning, you're going to have a terrible time. But I would definitely recommend, the path I usually recommend to people is, one, develop a skill that is in game dev but can be used elsewhere, whether that be art or design or programming. Start with some game jams or smaller projects where you have to collaborate with people. Any game this big is going to require good soft skills and planning, managing, what have you. Then try a couple of larger projects by yourself because there's certain skills you don't develop in these short turnaround games. For persistent, it's really easy to like get obsessed with the fun design part of a big project. Like find this guy, oh, this would be cool if we had dinosaurs and like real-time ray tracing or whatever. It's a lot harder when you're just in the grunt of it and you're not adding new features constantly and you're just like implementing the stuff you already committed to. You need to build a tolerance for that. And then
that's a good point.
I'm lucky that the pitch for this game is very easy. It's easy to find the people who would be interested to committing to this vision because it's a game that they want. I know a lot of my friends in game dev who really struggle because they have an ambitious game they want to do, but it's very niche and it's hard to find other people to commit to a long-term project. If you just have the money and you can pay people to do whatever, that's easy. Not a lot of indie devs just have a couple $1 million sitting around.
No.
And that is the kind of money that you're dealing with when you have like over a dozen people. This is something that like a lot of gamers think, oh, $1 million on Kickstarter, they should be able to like make a AAA game on that. Well, you need to pay people enough to pay their rent. So in most parts of the US, at least, that's at least $40,000, $50,000. If you're going to attract people to like commit fully to this, there needs to be benefits as well. It adds up. And you're not usually turning around a large game like this in 6 months. Even AAA studios that have fast turnarounds is because they've already built all the infrastructure for it. They've already got teams that are trained on this specific thing. So I would set your scope accordingly and make sure that the people that you're bringing on are in for the long haul. They also have experience. They already know what they're committing to. The way we have our company structured right now, we have certain guarantees, but I can't pay everyone up front. And that's just a thing that people realize when they're coming out of this. There is a guarantee of back pay. Everybody gets, everyone will, as soon as we have money, get a salary. Everybody's paid roughly around the same amount. Artists get slightly less because they get a huge dividend on any of their assets that we sell. But everybody accumulates shares in the company just for hours put in. There's no special roles. Everybody's an owner. We only have people working on this that are owners of the studio.
That's how you know everyone's heart is like going to be really in it, though.
Yeah, you have to sign a contract. You have to like commit to joining the company. And that was too high of a commitment for some people that we were talking to earlier in the project. And I'm glad that they're looking out for themselves and they know that they couldn't make that commitment. It'd be better for them to like know that up front than 2 years down the line. Also, definitely have it in writing. This is something that our lawyer is like really cemented into my head. Like, it's really easy to get people on this before the money's involved. If you have to write a contract after money's involved, things get very messy. People have much stronger emotions towards it. So make sure that everybody understands everything involved from the get-go. It's not that expensive to start an LLC. It does cost some money. And it depends on what state you're in, what the filing is. But it is really important to make sure that you're looking out for everyone. Before
I can see back pay being a hard sell.
It is. No, this whole thing's a hard sell. I'll say, like, unless you're paying people up front, they're committing hours of their time to this with the promise of future payment.
Stock is nice, though. I think that sort of thing really helps solidify, like, no, like, if this game does really well, you'll do really well, you know, like some sort of like attachment that is there more than just like a monetary value. But again, money is what keeps lights on and bills paid. And yeah, it is. It's a lot of time. So yeah, I could see that being hard, but it sounds like you guys have figured it out.
Yeah. Insofar as the people that are involved, I don't bring people on if this is going to be the difference between them being able to like afford food or rent or what other necessities. I would feel bad asking people to make that commitment. I make sure everybody's chill, everybody's good, everybody understands this is a long project because it's so ambitious. Yes, there's the potential to make money here.
There's also the potential to not, right?
Exactly.
Like
there's
pay
the potential
isn't guaranteed.
Correct. Yeah. So it's really important that everybody understands what they're jumping into here. For me too, like, again, I don't make anything if nobody else makes anything. I want to like set up the company so that I'm at just as much risk as everyone else.
Right.
In fact, I'm the one who's been upfronting all the money too. So I have maybe an outsized incentive for this to work out for everyone.
Right.
But yeah, it's important. Like, especially for younger devs who haven't worked necessarily in the workforce for long, like time is money and like you could be doing other stuff with your time. So make sure that if you are going to commit to something large like this, that it's something that you're going to see through, or at least that you've thought through that it's going to be worth the effort you put into it.
Right.
I'm very confident. I've talked to a lot of marketing people. The part of the reason that I was confident enough to make this company in the first place, if you look at the genre of monster tamers, for any monster tamer that has like any significant or like reasonable amount of marketing, there's a very high return. I don't know of any monster tamers that have like a reasonable amount of marketing that haven't made more than $2 million. It's a very underserved market because the upfront investment in time and resources is so high. And any AAA studios know that Pokemon is the big fish and they're not going to displace Pokemon. What's the name of it? Yokai Watch tried. They got close, but then they eventually fell to the wayside. Digimon is tried. Shin Megami Tensei is older than Pokemon, but they're still a dwarf comparatively. Palworld did very well for their initial release. And that didn't scare me away because Palworld already got in there. That only cemented confidence that like there are fans that want more out of this genre that aren't being served.
Right.
And I want to deliver something high quality that they can feel good, like that they are being listened to. We want this game to exist. I know from all the devs I've talked to, a lot of people want a game like this to exist. And I feel confident that if we can deliver the things that we're working on right now, that I will be able to take care of everyone who's involved. That's kind of where I'm at.
If you had to summarize the indie game dev experience in 3 words, what would it be?
Okay. So the first one is passion. Again, indie dev is not the most lucrative thing you could be doing with your time. Right. And a lot of companies do exploit that, which does suck. But you need to really like doing this. Again, you're going to spend hours upon hours learning new stuff, running against the wall, whether that or throwing away art, throwing away code. It's very tedious. There's not a built-in support network in a lot of parts of the country. I have the luxury that here in Chicago, we have a lot of devs looking out for each other. Not everybody has that. And even here, I might run into problems that I'm at the behest of some random Discord to help solve for me. So you really need to want to do this. This has to be the thing that will give you satisfaction. To that point, I'd say persistence. It's a long process. If you look at any of even the success stories for the solo devs, 5, 7, 10 years, most people are doing this in addition to their day job. I do not recommend to anyone out here, unless you're independently wealthy, do not quit your day job to do this. It sucks. You're going to want to commit more hours to it, but you need to look out for yourself. So persistence, being able to like start on something, keep doing it even when it's not fun. That's a skill that you'll need to have. And the last one I would say is to have confidence in your own vision and your own passion for games and your own idea for what games should be. If you're not making a game for yourself, this is not the space for you. I know indie devs that do just like pump out games and they can make a living, but that's very hard, especially for someone jumping into the space. It's easier for those people if they've already been in the industry, they have the skills, they know how the marketing and everything works, jump back, do this kind of soulless grind. That works for some people. But for a lot of people, going with the passion, having the self-motivation of making a thing that you enjoy not only makes the whole process a lot easier, but again, you could be making more money elsewhere. If you're not making the kind of game that you enjoy, I don't know why you're spending your time in this space. Also, the benefit indies have is they have the luxury of being able to commit an outsized amount of effort into something that might not be appealing to 70% of core demographics and make a 30 to 50% return on investment guaranteed. The nice thing about this space is people can be experimental. People can make a game that's just for 1 to 5 people. And that's cool. And I want to encourage people to keep doing that. Even our game is like, to some extent, a mass appeal game because the company is big enough that we do want to make a game that appealed to a lot of people. There were earlier times in development that we thought like 60% of the team would really like this thing, but for the other 40% of people, we can't guarantee that we can pay their rent. So we had to make that compromise. Smaller teams have more flexibility there, so keep that in mind. Those would be my like main takeaways. I hope that addressed your question.
Yeah, it does. And I agree. Like you see a lot of games that aren't typically thought of as being marketable get made in the indie space, which is really nice. I think it's good to just support other indie devs also. Because it's not guaranteed that you'll make any sort of return on the thing that you're working on. So you do have to enjoy it. You're right. Like it's almost like an art form, right? And it is, you have to enjoy that side of it, I think. And then that's when really special games get made. So my last question for you is, what's one thing that you hope players take away from like their experience playing your game?
I hope that when people walk away from this, I hope I can create the types of memories that stick with people. There's a lot of games that I remember from my childhood that there was a very specific, the first time I jumped into Bob-omb Battlefield, or even recently in Breath of the Wild, the first time I came across Eventide Island and it stripped all of my capabilities away. I hope that people can still have that childlike sense of wonder. I hope we can keep people surprised. I hope we can keep people engaged. And I hope that they can if I can make a game where people feel a connection to these NPC pieces of ones and zeros, then I'll know that I've succeeded. Because that's what and speaking from my experience talking to the team, that's what the team wants. We want a game where these little buddies feel like buddies. You feel like Ash out there on a mountain, you and your buddies against the elements, striving to like persist and like feeling satisfaction in that struggle. That type of immersion, I sometimes get in games and sometimes I don't. And we want to make that true as much as possible for as many people as possible. That's the kind of game that we're trying to make. And if we can nail that for even a percentage of the player base, then we'll know we've succeeded.
Yeah, it sounds like you're on the right path for that, for sure. And I think that the consequences and the actions that players do having like an impact, it will feel like to some playing games for the first time where you have no idea what to expect. And it's exciting. So yeah, that was it. I appreciate you coming on to talk. And I will, of course, have links below. I know you have like an official site.
Yes.
There isn't exactly social media yet, right?
So we do have the social media. We haven't started our social media campaign yet because we want to build enough stuff that we're not just going to leave people hanging.
Right.
But all the links to our social media is on the website. It's just elemera.com, ELEMERA.com. And as you said,
I'll link it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thanks again.
No, thanks so much for the interview. I really appreciate the opportunity. And this was a lot of fun.